There are moments when the ground you have been standing on for your entire adult life suddenly feels less like solid earth and more like the shifting shoreline of the lake outside my office window. One ordinary Thursday afternoon in Whitefish, everything I thought I understood about my older brother, about the business we had built together, and about what family loyalty actually meant simply moved. My name is Samantha Reed. I am 32 years old. If you have ever felt the people who are supposed to have your back quietly rewriting the rules while you were busy protecting the life you built, I hope you will stay with me while I tell you what happened when those rules finally came crashing down in the middle of my own office. The day started like most others that early summer. I was sitting at my desk in the small but bright waterfront building I had renovated 2 years earlier, reviewing closing documents for a lakefront property I had listed for a couple from Seattle. The afternoon light came in, low, across the water, turning everything a soft gold. My daughter Grace had just texted that she was on her way over after school because she wanted to show me the new sketch she had made for the surprise project her uncle had let her help with. She had been so excited about it for weeks. I smiled at the phone, set it aside, and went back to the paperwork. Then the front door opened without a knock. My older brother Nathan walked in carrying a thin leather folder the color of expensive bourbon. He was dressed the way he always dressed when he wanted to look like the reasonable one in the room, pressed chinos, a crisp button-down boat shoes that had never actually touched a boat. He closed the door behind him and stood there for a second, letting the silence stretch. I thought we should talk before this gets any more complicated, he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle, the same tone he used when he was about to tell me I was overreacting to something. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Talk about what? He sat down, placed the folder on the desk between us, and slid it toward me with 2 fingers. The updated operating agreement for the compound properties. Dad and I went over it last week. It just makes sense to consolidate the decision making. You have been stretched thin with Grace in the listings. This protects everyone. I opened the folder. The first page was a share transfer document. My name was already typed on the signature line. The date was 3 weeks earlier. The language stated that I had voluntarily transferred 60% of my ownership stake in the 3 lakefront parcels we had inherited and developed together to my older brother, Nathan Reed, for the purpose of streamlined family management and future expansion. I read the paragraph twice, then a third time. I never signed this, I said quietly. Nathan leaned back in the chair and gave me the small, patient smile he had perfected since we were kids. You did, Sam. We went over it at the house. You were distracted with Grace's school thing. You said you trusted me to handle the boring parts. My stomach dropped. The room felt smaller, the light on the water suddenly too bright. I remembered the afternoon he was talking about. I had stopped by the main house on the compound to pick up Grace after she spent the afternoon helping Uncle Nathan with his big surprise. She had been bubbling over about how she got to pick the color of the new dock furniture and how Uncle Nathan said the new house would be half hers one day. I had signed nothing that day. I had barely sat down. I didn't sign anything, I repeated. My voice stayed level even though the floor under my chair seemed to tilt. Nathan's expression didn't change. Look at the signature page. It's witnessed. Dad signed as witness. I flipped to the last page. There was my name in blue ink. Below it in my father's careful handwriting was the word witness and the date. The air in the office felt thinner. I could hear the gentle slap of water against the dock pilings outside, and underneath it, the low hum of the refrigerator in the tiny kitchenette. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 10 minutes earlier, but nothing was. My phone buzzed on the desk. Grace, almost there. Can't wait to show you the drawing. I turned the screen face down. Nathan, I said, and I was surprised at how steady I sounded. This transfers majority control of the properties that were supposed to stay equal between us. The ones we agreed would eventually go to Grace. You know that was the plan. He shrugged the movement small and almost apologetic. Plans change when one person isn't pulling their weight the same way anymore. You have been focused on residential listings. I have been the one out there finding the development deals that actually grow the portfolio. Dad agrees this is cleaner. Dad agrees, I repeated. The words tasted metallic. Before I could say anything else, the office door opened again. Grace burst in her backpack, bouncing against her back, a rolled up piece of paper in her hand. She stopped short when she saw her uncle. Uncle Nathan, I finished the doc sketch like you asked. I made the chairs blue because you said blue is calm. She held the paper out, beaming. Nathan's face softened into the warm uncle smile he wore so easily. That's perfect, kiddo. Why don't you leave it on Aunt Sam's desk and go grab a juice from the fridge? Your mom and I are just finishing up some grown-up paperwork. Grace looked at me uncertain for half a second, then did as she was told. I heard the refrigerator door open and the sound of her humming to herself. Nathan turned back to me, the smile gone. See, she already thinks of it as the family project. It will be easier for everyone if we stop pretending the decisions need to be split 50-50. You can still have input. You just won't have to carry the weight of the big shell back. Deze soorten en jo shell back. I go desta wow bias and this standas out at animal down so the more giraffe cap or. I felt something cold and precise click into place behind my ribs. You involved my daughter in this without telling me what it actually was, I said. She wanted to help, he answered as if that settled it. Kids like feeling useful. You are making this into a much bigger deal than it needs to be. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my father. I answered on speaker without thinking. William Nathan said before I could speak, she's looking at the papers right now. My father's voice came through steady and tired in the way it always got when he thought I was being difficult. Samantha, we talked about this. Your brother is the one who has kept the compound running while you have been building your little listing business. It makes sense for him to have the final say on the development side. You are still a partner. No one is taking anything away from you. I stared at the phone. You witnessed a document I never signed. There was a short pause. Then my father said, you were there. You were distracted. Nathan explained it all. Sometimes we have to trust the person who is actually doing the work. Grace came back into the room holding a juice box, her drawing still in her other hand. She looked from my face to Nathan's to the papers on the desk. The excited light in her eyes dimmed. Mom, is everything okay? Uncle Nathan said the new house was going to be a surprise for all of us. Nathan stood up and ruffled her hair. It still is, Gracie. Your mom just needs a minute to look over the grown-up words. Why don't you show her the drawing while I step outside and make a quick call? He walked out onto the small deck overlooking the water already dialing. I heard him say, she's being difficult again before the door closed. Grace climbed into the chair he had just left and unrolled her paper. It was a careful pencil sketch of a long dock with blue Adirondack chairs and a big house behind it. In the corner she had written, for our family lake house, love, Grace. I looked at the signature on the document in front of me and then at my daughter's careful handwriting and felt the first real crack open inside my chest. My older brother came back in a few minutes later, slid his phone into his pocket and picked up the folder. Dad and I will handle the filing. You do not have to do anything else. Just keep doing what you are good at, selling the smaller properties. We will take care of the big picture. He left without waiting for an answer. Grace stayed in the chair, her juice box forgotten on the desk. Mom, did I do something wrong with the drawing? Uncle Nathan said it was going to be our special project. I reached across the desk and took her hand. It was small and warm and sticky from the juice. You did not do anything wrong, baby, not even a little bit. She nodded, but the worried crease between her eyebrows stayed. After I drove her home and got her settled with her homework and a snack, I went back to the office alone. The folder was still on my desk where Nathan had left it. I opened it again and flipped through every page looking for anything that might explain how my signature had appeared there. Near the back, tucked between two copies of the operating agreement, was a single sheet of paper that did not belong. It was old creased, the ink slightly faded. It was a letter never mailed addressed to me in my older brother's handwriting. The date at the top was from 7 years earlier, right after our father had first put the compound properties into the joint holding company. I read the first paragraph and felt the floor tilt again, harder this time. Samantha, I know you think we are splitting everything evenly, but I moved some of the older accounts into a separate structure Dad helped set up. It was the only way to keep the development money liquid for the new lots. You will still get your share of the income. I just need more control on paper for the banks. I will tell you when the time is right. Please do not make this a thing. The letter ended there. No signature, no date of when he had planned to send it. It had been sitting in a file for 7 years. I sat in my quiet office with the lake darkening outside the windows and read the letter 3 more times. The words did not change. My older brother had been moving pieces around for years. He had involved my daughter in the latest version of the same game, and my father had helped him sign my name to it. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into my bag. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled until I found the number for Allison Grant, the private investigator I had used once before on a difficult closing when a seller's story had not added up. She answered on the second ring. Allison, I said, and my voice sounded strangely calm even to my own ears. I need you to look into something for me. It is about money that was supposed to be there and suddenly is not. And it is about my family. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, send me what you have. I will start tonight. I hung up and sat in the dark office for a long time watching the last light leave the water. Outside, the lake looked peaceful the way it always did. Inside, everything I had trusted was already coming apart at the seams, and I had only just begun to see how far the threads went. The office stayed quiet after I hung up with Allison Grant, but the quiet felt different now, like the moment right before a storm finally breaks over the lake. I sat there with the old letter in my bag and the forged document still open on my desk, listening to the water lap against the pilings outside. My older brother had been moving pieces for years. My father had helped him, and I had only just started to understand how deep it went. The next morning, I woke before the sun and drove Grace to school with the radio off. She kept glancing at me from the passenger seat, her small fingers twisting the strap of her backpack. Mom, is Uncle Nathan mad at you? She asked finally. I kept my eyes on the road. Why would you think that, baby? She shrugged, the motion small and uncertain. He called last night after you put me to bed. He told Dad that you were being difficult about the lake house again and that it would be better if I didn't get my hopes up about the new dock until everything was settled. The words landed like stones in still water. My older brother had called my father. He had used my daughter to deliver the message that I was the problem. I reached over and squeezed her hand once gently. You do not have to worry about any of that, I told her. The only thing you need to focus on is your spelling test today. Everything else is grown-up stuff. She nodded, but the crease between her eyebrows stayed. I walked her all the way to the classroom door and watched until she disappeared inside. Then I sat in the car for 5 full minutes with my hands tight on the steering wheel before I finally drove to the office. Allison Grant was already waiting when I arrived. She was early 40s, quiet, with the kind of steady eyes that made people tell her things they later regretted. She placed a single folder on my desk without ceremony. Started with the public records on the holding company, she said. Your brother has been moving money out of the joint accounts for at least 6 years. Small amounts at first, then larger transfers into a separate LLC registered in his name only. The LLC owns a piece of land adjacent to the compound that never showed up on any of your statements. I opened the folder. The numbers were clean and cold. 6 years of transfers that added up to more than the value of 2 of the lakefront parcels combined. Assets that had simply vanished from the books we were supposed to share equally. There is more, Allison said. One of the early transfers went through an account controlled by Benjamin Cole. I remember the name from the original development permits. He was listed as a consultant on the first 2 lots. Benjamin Cole. I had not thought about him in years. He had been part of the early team when my older brother and I first started buying property together. Charming good with numbers, the kind of person who always seemed to know which permits would sail through and which ones would stall. We drifted apart after the 3rd lot closed. I had assumed it was just life moving on. Call him, I said. Allison raised an eyebrow. You sure old associates sometimes get nervous when old money starts moving. I am sure. She left me with the folder and the quiet. I sat there for a long time, staring at the numbers until my phone rang. It was my father. Samantha, he said, without greeting, your brother tells me you hired some investigator. That is not how we handle family business. I kept my voice even. Then how do we handle it, Dad? By signing my name to documents I never saw and telling my daughter she should not get her hopes up. There was a pause. In the background, I could hear the low murmur of the television in the main house on the compound. My father sighed, the sound heavy and familiar. Nathan has always been the one who sees the big picture. You have always been the one who worries about the details. That is not a criticism. It is just how you are built. Right now, the big picture requires one person to have clear authority. Fighting it is only going to confuse Grace and make things harder for everyone. I felt the old familiar pressure settle across my shoulders, the same pressure that had been there since I was a teenager. And my father had explained patiently why Nathan's football trophies mattered more than my report card. Only now the pressure had teeth. It was using my daughter's name. I am not fighting, I said. I am asking questions. Sometimes asking questions is the same thing as fighting, my father answered. Think about what you are doing to this family before you make it worse. He hung up. The rest of the morning passed in fragments. A client called to reschedule a showing. Another client texted to say they had heard rumors about instability at the compound and wanted to know if their deposit was safe. I answered both with the same calm professionalism I had always used, but the words felt thinner each time. The small community around the lake was already starting to shift. People who had waved from their boats last week were suddenly too busy to reply to messages. Just after noon, my phone rang again. This time it was Benjamin Cole. Samantha, he said, and his voice carried the same easy warmth it always had. Allison Grant reached out. I figured you might call eventually. I need to understand what happened with the transfers 6 years ago, I said. The ones that went through the account you controlled. He was quiet for a beat. Then he said, Nathan asked me to move some operating capital into a holding structure that would give him more flexibility with the banks. He said you had already approved it. I had no reason to doubt him at the time. You never mentioned it to me. I should have, he admitted. But Nathan made it sound like it was already settled between the two of you. By the time I realized it was not, the money had already moved and the new lots were under contract. Bringing it up would have just created problems for everyone. Problems for everyone. The same phrase my father had used. The same phrase my older brother had used. I felt the instability rising again, the sense that the ground was still moving even though I was sitting still. Did you know he was using Grace's name in the paperwork for the newest transfer? I asked. Benjamin was quiet longer this time. No, he said finally. That part I did not know. We ended the call without either of us saying much else. I sat with the phone in my hand and watched a pair of kayakers glide past the office window. They looked peaceful. I wondered if they had any idea how many invisible lines were being redrawn on the shore behind them. That evening, Christopher came home from a long day at the architectural firm where he worked and found me still at the kitchen table with Allison's folder open in front of me. Grace was in her room finishing homework. He poured 2 glasses of water, set one in front of me, and sat down without asking what was wrong. He never did. He just waited. I told him everything: the forged signature, the old letter, the transfers Allison had found, the way my father had spoken about Nathan having clear authority, the way my older brother had used Grace to deliver the message that I was the difficult one. Christopher listened all the way through. When I finished, he reached across the table and covered my hand with his. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to know how far it goes," I said, "and then I want to decide what peace actually looks like for Grace and for me." He nodded once the movement small and certain. "Then that is what we will do." Later that night, after Grace was asleep, I sat on the edge of our bed and opened the old letter again. The words had not changed. My older brother had written them 7 years ago and never sent them. He had simply kept moving the pieces. My father had helped him sign my name. Benjamin Cole had stayed quiet because speaking up would have created problems. The lake outside our window was dark now. I could not see the water, but I could hear it. The sound was steady, the same as it had always been. Everything else felt like it was still shifting. I folded the letter and put it back in my bag. Then I picked up my phone and texted Allison Grant 3 words: "Keep going." She replied almost immediately, "Already am." I turned off the light and laid down beside my husband. Sleep did not come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the numbers from the folder and Grace's worried face when she asked if her uncle was mad at me. The ground was still moving. I could feel it, and I was no longer sure where it would finally settle. The next few days moved like water just before a storm, deceptively calm on the surface, while everything underneath pulled in different directions. Allison Grant sent over the full report on a Thursday morning. The numbers were worse than I had imagined. My older brother had moved more than $800,000 out of the joint accounts over 6 years, routing most of it through the LLC he controlled and then into a separate development on land that had never appeared on any statement I received. Benjamin Cole's name appeared on 3 of the earliest transfers as the person who had structured the paperwork to keep things clean for the banks. I read every page twice. Then I called an attorney named Elena Vargas, someone Allison recommended, who specialized in family business disputes. She listened without interrupting while I laid out the forged signature, the old letter, and the vanished assets. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You have a strong case for undoing the transfer and recovering the moved funds," she said, "but these situations often cost more than money. Are you prepared for what it will do to the rest of your family?" I thought about Grace asking if her uncle was mad at me. I thought about my father's tired voice telling me that asking questions was the same as fighting. I thought about the way the ground had kept shifting under my feet for days. "I am prepared for the cost of knowing the truth," I answered. "I am not prepared to keep pretending I do not see it." Elena Vargas agreed to draw up the demand letter. While she worked, I met with Michael Thorne at the small local bank that had handled most of the compound accounts. He was polite, but visibly uncomfortable when I showed him the transfer records Allison had pulled. "These should have required signatures from both owners," he said finally. "The fact that they went through without yours, someone signed on your behalf, or the verification was bypassed, I can have our compliance team pull the original authorizations by tomorrow." By Friday, the small shifts in the community had become impossible to ignore. Linda Shaw, a neighbor whose family had owned the property 2 lots down for 20 years, stopped by the office under the pretense of asking about a new listing. After a few minutes of small talk, she set her coffee down and looked at me directly. "People are talking," she said. A couple of the families who were considering investing in Nathan's new lots pulled out after hearing there was trouble with the ownership. One of them told me they did not want to get caught in the middle of whatever is happening between you two. "I thought you should know." She left without finishing her coffee. The social circle that had once included easy boat rides and shared holidays was already beginning to step back. My older brother's name was becoming something people avoided saying out loud in public. That afternoon, I called Nathan and my father and asked them to meet me at my office at 5. I did not give a reason. Nathan arrived first, wearing the same patient expression he had worn the day he slid the folder across my desk. My father came 10 minutes later, his shoulders set in the familiar way that meant he had already decided I was being difficult again. I did not offer them coffee. I simply placed Elena Vargas's demand letter and Alice's full report on the desk between us, along with a printed copy of the 7-year-old letter my older brother had never mailed. Nathan picked up the demand letter first. His face stayed calm, but I watched the color drain from around his mouth. "This is aggressive," he said. "We could have worked this out like adults. You signed my name to a document I never saw," I answered. "You involved my daughter in the story. You told her about the new doc. You moved money that belonged to all of us and hid it. That is not working it out like adults. That is theft dressed up as family management." My father leaned forward. "Samantha, you are letting one disagreement destroy everything your grandfather built. Nathan has always carried more of the load. Sometimes that means he needs more authority on paper. You are turning this into something it does not have to be." I looked at him and felt the last thread of the old childhood bond snap cleanly inside my chest. There was no anger left, only a clear, quiet space where the loyalty used to live. "Dad," I said, "he forged my signature with your help as witness. He has been moving money for years. Benjamin Cole just admitted he helped structure the early transfers because Nathan told him I had already agreed, and you are still sitting here telling me I am the one destroying the family." Nathan set the letter down. For the first time, the calm mask slipped. "Benjamin does not know the full context. He is covering his own involvement. You have always been good at finding numbers that make other people look bad." Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Benjamin Cole. I put him on speaker without asking permission. "Samantha," he said, "I have been thinking about our conversation. There is something else. Nathan asked me 6 years ago how to keep you from noticing the transfers. I told him to keep you busy with the smaller residential listings and to make sure Grace stayed excited about the family project. I thought I was helping keep the peace. I was wrong." The office went completely still. Nathan stared at the phone. My father's face had gone gray. Benjamin continued, his voice steady. "I am willing to sign a statement about what I knew and when. I should have said something then. I am saying it now." I ended the call. The silence that followed felt heavier than any shouting could have been. My older brother stood up. "You are going to regret dragging everyone into this," he said. His voice was no longer patient. It was sharp and small. "Grace is going to hear things. People are already choosing sides. You could have kept this inside the family." I stayed seated. "The family stopped being a safe place the moment you signed my name without me and used my daughter to sell the lie. I am not dragging anyone anywhere. I am simply refusing to keep walking the path you laid out." My father did not stand. He looked at the papers on the desk as if they might disappear if he stared long enough. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. You have always been the one who asked too many questions, he said. I do not know how to fix this with you anymore. I nodded once. Then do not fix it. I am done asking the family to choose between the truth and keeping Nathan comfortable. They left without another word. Nathan took the demand letter with him. My father did not look back. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Elena Vargas filed the necessary papers on Monday. Michael Thorne's compliance team confirmed that 3 of the transfers had bypassed the dual signature requirement. By the end of the following week, Nathan had agreed through his own attorney to unwind the LLC, return the moved funds with interest, and restore my original ownership stake in the 3 lakefront parcels. He kept the adjacent land he had developed on his own, but the majority control he had tried to claim was gone. The cost to him was significant, both financially and in the quiet withdrawal of several investors who no longer wanted their names attached to the dispute. My father never called again. Helen tried once, her voice careful and sad on the voicemail, but I did not return it. The childhood bond I had spent 32 years trying to protect had been severed by the choice he made in my office that afternoon. I felt the loss in quiet moments when I drove past the main house on the compound or when Grace asked why we were not going to Grandpa's for the usual Sunday lunch anymore. The loss was real and it was permanent. I did not pretend otherwise. What I gained was something I had not known I was missing. Christopher and I took Grace out on the dock one clear evening 2 weeks after the settlement papers were signed. She brought her latest drawing, this one of the 3 of us on the old dock with new blue chairs. No big new house, no surprise project, just the 3 of us and the water. I watched her tape the drawing to the refrigerator and felt the ground under my feet settle for the first time in weeks. It was not the same ground I had stood on before. It was smaller in some ways and steadier in others. I had traded the illusion of a united family for the reality of clear boundaries. The trade hurt. It also felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. In the months that followed, I chose peace every single day. Some days, that meant saying no to invitations that would have pulled me back into the old patterns. Some days it meant sitting with Grace while she asked hard questions about why families change and answering her with as much honesty as she could hold. Some days it simply meant closing my laptop at 5 and walking down to the water with my husband instead of chasing one more closing. The peace was not loud or dramatic. It was the quiet decision made again and again to stop arranging my life around people who had already shown me who they were willing to protect. My older brother still lives on the compound. We pass each other on the road sometimes. He waves, I wave back. That is the entire relationship now. My father has not reached out again. I have not reached out to him. The silence is the boundary I chose, and I keep choosing it because it protects the life I'm actually living instead of the one I was expected to maintain. Grace still draws pictures of the lake. She still asks questions. I still answer them. The future she is walking toward is no longer tangled in documents she never saw and stories she was never meant to carry. That more than any settlement check is the part that feels like victory. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. Have you set boundaries with the people who keep rewriting the rules in your own life?